I'm really excited to be delivering this today. And this is specifically about how to leverage your executive brand to win qualified speaking engagements. Whether you've had an executive brand built and managed for a while, or maybe you're new to this, really want to dive in. So again, at the end, I'm going to have time for questions. So any questions that you have about branding or speaking, or anything that you have top of mind. Okay, so Linda gave an excellent overview. I just wanted to just quickly more talk about why I got into this and what I've seen over the years that might assist you in your journey to really leverage your brand for speaking engagements and to drive a personal brand that drives worth. That's what it's really all about. So I've been in digital marketing a very long time, and in 2008, 2009, during the economic recession and depression, really, what happened was there were a lot of executives that were starting their own businesses. And they were known in their industry and known for the companies that they were working for, like Bear Stearns was a client, but they didn't have really too much visibility and, market visibility, market share around their new brand and their new venture. So if you're in that place where you're starting a new venture, have your own business, a personal brand is really important when it's done correctly. So this is why I got into personal branding and executive branding in the first place. And across the board, the personal brands needed to drive thought leadership. So speaking and authoring are key pieces of this. So having this uniform and in a way to tie this together is really, truly important. So I'm going to jump right into the presentation. So let's just talk about why strategic personal branding wins speaking engagements. So I've worked with a lot of clients that come to me with the beginning of a brand, or maybe they just have a LinkedIn profile, maybe they have a personal brand strategy. Some of them literally just have goals. So the first piece for success is really a strategy, is to have a personal brand that ties into your authenticity, because everyone has a brand. But it's really about where I always say to my clients, it's about like what you cement as what you're going to commit to around your individual authentic brand. That's really, really important for you to think about. How does your brand align with your background, your expertise, your leadership style, and how can you create a unique value prop, right? Because at the end of the day, whether you're speaking on a webinar, you're speaking to a very large audience at a conference, or maybe it's a small intimate workshop. I do a lot of those. At the end of the day, the decision makers, they are looking for that unique value prop, and they're looking for your history, right? So that's why I've done so many talks, because I'm honing in on my focus and my positioning in executive branding. And more importantly, female executive branding, right? That's where I hang my hat. So where is it that you individually hyper focus, and how can you build a value prop by building experience in that? I think that is really number one to get the eyes and ears and attention of the decision maker. And then it's around designing, a recognizable brand identity. So as Linda mentioned, I do a couple of things, and my clients do a lot of different things. So where is it that you're really focused on in terms of your brand? What's your external brand in terms of your style, your internal brand? How do you speak? How do you, communicate with others? These things are truly, truly important. I'm just trying to move the Zoom box so I can, okay. So, it's not unlike branding for companies. So most times, and I do a lot of authoring on this subject, it's how do we both relate the personal brand to the company brand, as well as how do we differentiate that, as well as how do we create a personal brand that then helps to drive signals to drive customer development to the company brand. So when you're thinking about your personal brand, or overall your executive brand, having consistency across colors, design, obviously social media branding, messaging, because you don't want a disconnect. So one of the things I see too often is speakers, utilizing, AI tools or personal brand managers where the language is inconsistent in the way that they deliver their personality and speaking. So that all needs to be very, very, very consistent. And so the strategy, again, because this is really the piece I'm on right now, the strategy defining, your messaging. Is it direct? Is it more story driven? Are you more in, kind of, do you tell stories in terms of, are you funny on stage, or, are you very direct and you give stats, right? And that also depends on the industry that you're delivering to, right? So, for example, a lot of my clients and my clients' clients that are speakers are in healthcare. So they have a very specific way of delivering and talking based on the industry. So that's important for you to think about when you're building your personal brand strategy. Style is a huge piece, both digitally and on stage. How you look, how you walk, how you communicate, how many pauses you take, if you speak in multiple languages, these things are all important. And then really understanding who your audience is and how they absorb information. So the strategy for me is extremely important, because this is the starting block. Again, whether you've been doing personal branding for a long time or fairly new to it, this really sets the stage for your success in the future. Okay, move on to the next slide. Okay. The other piece here is really about your on-stage and online consistency, as I was mentioning, right? So your narrative, right? I'm a New Yorker. Well, I'm not born here, but I've become a New Yorker, and I'm very direct. And people like that about me. My clients, some of my clients are very soft-spoken, so it really should match kind of who you are to how you lead and how you speak and how you deliver. Because at the end of the day, it's not that you're just getting hired to speak. A lot of times, your highest success I've seen is developing a relationship with a conference series, a conference organizer, so you can be thought of to be engaged as a speaker over time. So really building that trust and credibility along with your narrative is very, very important. The other thing that's really important, obviously, is setting measurable speaker goals. So in your strategy up front, who are you targeting? Like in terms of your specific audience that you're going to speak to, that will help you to define and build out your target goal strategy for conferences and events. What event types are you more apt to win, right? Because some speakers, they're very much motivational speakers or big ideas or futuristic speakers. And those are like the TEDx's and the bigger speakers, where others can be equally as successful doing more intimate workshops or smaller engagements, right? So that's really important. And then having that up front and defining that on paper, can help you to track those opportunities and measure results over time. And note that strategy and planning obviously changes over time. So these are measuring sticks that you need to really have in place to measure your success over time. I can't tell you how many times strategies and goals have changed from year to year based on the growth of someone and where they're going, because when you start out as a speaker, even if you're a speaker for a long time, sometimes your topics will change and enhance based on what's needed in the industry, right? So like I have a client right now that's doing a lot of speaking on podcasts, specifically around AI in manufacturing, and it's something that they never talked about before, So staying on top of industry trends and seeing how that will maybe possibly affect the topics that you cover while staying consistent with your expertise is very important. Okay, so there is a lot here on how to create a winning speaker brand. I'm just going to roll up all the bullets because I want to go through them. Okay, so creating the online materials and presence in line with your number one theme. Let's just start there, right? So I talked about, Linda, should I let in the people that are in the waiting room? Or you're handling that? Okay, great, thank you. So having a number one theme that you talk about and a very specific audience, right? That is the first place that you really want to hone in on, because I've seen of all the clients that I've worked with and, training that I've done, the speakers generally have a lot of experience that they're bringing to the table. So you could potentially talk about, let's say, 3 to 5 different topics of expertise, but focusing really on one theme will help you to be more consistent and help you to drive larger impact and market share as a speaker. Engaging in the brand design, as I mentioned before, is really important, as you would a company. So as we go through brand discovery for a company, you want to think about your individual speaker brand. So in terms of literally everything, in terms of, your social media content, what you're wearing, as Linda mentioned, I have a couple of fashion lines, one that we're launching in New York, July 13th. It's really about how would you stand on stage? How do you present online? What colors really suit you? What are your favorite colors and really what resonates with you? And this will then detail your brand design across all your speaker marketing materials, your speaker kit, your logo, your background on your screen, any backdrops or props you use when you speak, when you're having a one-on-one conversation, when you meet somebody for lunch or dinner, it really becomes a consistency so people can expect, can kind of have an expectation of you that really builds up the value of that brand. Media training is very, very important, I think, but I always say with media training, we have a media trainer at my company, that helps my clients when they need that, obviously for television, film, sometimes speaking on stage. But however, it's also delivering with your true self in mind, right? So how do you speak to a client? How do you speak to somebody when you're done with your speech? So tying that in, I think, is really, really important. Again, it's going back to consistency, because the thing is, I've been in social branding and social selling for 21 years now. And I can tell you that the social branding piece is where the reputation management as a speaker is really important, where people are really going to see beyond the stage in how you really are as a person. So it's personal branding and professional branding that you need to keep in mind. Having that consistently designed speaker brand, depending on where you are in your journey as a speaker and your personal brand, having it across everything. I'm talking about website, LinkedIn, all your speaker directories, Facebook. That's why the strategy and the planning up front is just so, so important. Then again, with the strategy, if you say, okay, well, I want to be on all these channels, I've seen many times over where speakers don't upkeep those platforms and directories. So note, if you're going to commit to developing and delivering a speaker brand across digital and offline, that you want to make sure you have a plan and resources obviously in place to keep those active. Really, really important. And then, the speaker kit. So I'm sure all of you have a speaker kit. The speaker kit changes all the time. That's something to be aware of, right? So let's say you get new photography done, or you're doing multiple speeches and you have new videos, and you should always have proper video when you speak, obviously. And you should always look to have refreshed photography, I would say once every 6 months for sure. So, having a speaker kit developed up front, but then make sure that's updated. And so people will ask you, what are your speaker topics? What are your rates? I want to see your last 3 speaker talks. All of that should be organized and updated. These are simple things, but they're very, very important. And they want to know kind of upfront, what do you want to speak on? So this I want to talk about for a second. I think it's really important. So you may have general topics. Let's say you have 3 to 5 general topics you speak on, correct? And descriptions. But you also want to do your homework and your due diligence before any new speaking opportunity, because a lot of times you need to kind of curate or edit that topic for a specific audience. I'll just give you a very quick example. I do executive branding as a keynote speaker. This past week, I was brought into an organization, and they're in finance, and they're really looking to understand how the executive brand ties into boardroom readiness It's very specific. So I had to create an entirely new description, right? So that's really important because that can help you win speaking opportunities that you might not even think of. So it's really, really important that you understand and obviously also alert yourself of new speaking opportunities to curate possibly subtopics. I've personally seen with my clients lots of wins by having them do that and do that on a consistent monthly basis. Obviously, having a podcast and other media outreach plan and weekly activities. So places you can speak beyond the stage, so to speak, podcasts. Linda was a guest on my podcast. Of course, she was amazing. And, but having that, it's all about visibility, right? So being a part of topic-based and target-based podcasts and other media is very, very important. It could be in your community. I've seen a lot of times with my clients. Obviously, you have your standard television, you have your standard podcasts. The other thing to look for is in creating a winning speaker brand is look for collaboration opportunities to provide insight. So it could be a collaborative article on LinkedIn, right? It could be you see a post out there on a topic that you cover as a speaker. That's something that you should have an alert on every week to chime in on with some type of comment of value, because the speaker brand, you need to consistently have it in the right ecosystems. So if you're out there and you're not only delivering your topic of expertise, let's say on your own LinkedIn profile or your own Facebook page or your own website, it's also about getting you into those ecosystems and communities of peers that will lead you to paid speaking engagements. Having a conference plan, obviously that's very important. And again, this changes over time. So I always start my clients, for example, with the industry because it's a no-brainer. What industry are you in? Who are you selling to? What conferences? What are the big conferences and the smaller conferences happening throughout the year? What's your regional area? Because a lot of times conferences, they'll pick from a regional area because maybe they don't want to outlay expenses for travel. So that's a good thing to do. And then you can build up, popularity in that area and grow from there. And that's a really good way to approach it. Because again, I don't know who's on the Zoom today in terms of how many speaking engagements you've had, where you've had your wins, but these are best practices. Okay. Now I want to talk about, I thought it was important to talk about where speakers fail, because I really would love, my goal of being on this today is, once this is over, you're going to start, hitting it out of the park. You're going to avoid traps, avoid mistakes, and start and having a plan that really works for you. So, definitely areas where I've seen speakers fail in leveraging their brand, whether they have a team of people working for them, or they have no team, or they have one person. So handing off your brand to someone to manage with no strategy in mind never works. That's why I start with the strategy, because it's almost like you're writing, just like you would for a company, you're writing an SOP for your personal speaker brand. Very, very important. No professional brand development done in advance. It's, speaking is a very competitive industry overall in general. So you want to make sure that you have a professional brand. You want to make sure you have that strategy so that when you do employ or deploy new people or resources or partners, they have good guidelines to work with. Having systems in place, this is my favorite piece actually, is having systems in place to manage and measure effectiveness. Because a lot of times you're doing things by trial and error as a speaker, even if you're placed on every single out there, even if you even if you are consistently pushing out a speaker brand, if you don't have a system in place to measure your effectiveness, you could be wasting time and money. So that's really important. And that could be anything from honestly, just a solid CRM to something more advanced like a whole market automation system. The other thing that's important, and I think what I talk about on my with Warrior Women in Business in the podcast, but definitely for speakers, is understanding your value as a speaker. This is so important. I put out a video on YouTube and it has the most views of all my YouTube videos, and I've been doing these things forever. And the video is about why speakers should get paid, and it was like a guidebook for conference organizers, because I got like honestly sick and tired of my speaker clients getting kind of negotiated down. So having your value to say, if you are or you're not as part of a speaker bureau, thinking of yourself as a tier A in a speaker bureau, this is my value. I'm worth whatever you're worth, $50,000 a speech or whatever it is. And then substantiating that with your materials. It's really, really important. Obviously, there are exceptions. So if you want to speak for a charitable cause or philanthropic cause or a nonprofit that you really care about, and it helps to build your speaker brand and your community popularity, 100% do it. Collaborative speaking opportunities where maybe you're speaking with another speaker that has a larger audience, definitely do it. But you need to have your rates in place as a speaker. This is so, so important. Wasting time with unqualified speaking engagements just because the speaker directory, alerts you of a ton of new speaking engagements, even if they're paid. It's important to either take the time yourself or have someone take the time to review those based on your specific goals and your specific values as a speaker. Where do you want to speak? Why do you want to speak there? What's the audience? What's the value? Really important. And again, going back to systems and guidelines, having this all written and in place. They don't use a well-developed speaker plan. So it really needs to be fully developed from, again, who's the target audience, right? How often am I creating content or having someone or a team do it for me? How often am I pushing out that content? How does your speaker brand, again, because I don't know you ladies yet, tie into the business that you own? Or maybe if you're just a speaker, how is this getting you from year 1 to year 2? But having, just like you would have a plan for your business, having a speaker plan that you can measure against and make changes to it, right? Speakers that try to manage it all on their own and try to do it, without an investment, it really doesn't work, because even if it's just time is money. So that's truly important. So generally a winning speaker brand has a team behind them. You see the keynote speakers that are out there that are on gazillions of podcasts or all over stages, and they're getting paid. Believe me, they have a team. And in today's world, having the content person and the person on site is even more important. So there's a whole new kind of crew of speaker support that you would need to have. And they fail to invest in the speaker brand, whether it's styling, wardrobe, websites, social media, photography, video. Many times, even last night, I was at a top tier event in the VC world, and I was there as an attendee, and I saw these really impressive keynote speakers, and there was no professional photography and no professional video. And I just kind of shook my head. So, you definitely want to have that, because capturing that will help to keep consistency again, because a lot of what the conference organizers, the festival organizers, wherever you're looking to speak, what they're looking for is, how often is this person speaking? What kind of audiences have they spoken in front of? What's their style? It's really important that they see that, because as a speaker, you're going through an evolution of change, and they definitely want to see that. Okay. Oops. No, budgeting. Okay. So budgeting for a winner speaker brand. So I mentioned some of the things, but definitely having an investment for your speaker brand and synonymously your personal brand. This is all kind of in one. Having the strategy and messaging, the design is so important. That's so important. And that ties into the styling and the wardrobe, not that I think when you are speaking, wherever you're speaking, whenever you're speaking, is having a plan for that, literally having a closet for that, your styling, your wardrobe, your website. So if you're speaking somewhere, making sure that not only is that announced in all your channels, but it's updated in all your channels. So things may change, like a time may change, right? Maybe, a venue changes. It's just important that is always updated Personal brand manager for all on-site speaking engagements. Speaking in itself, I'm sure you can agree, is work, and you want to look and sound your best. That's really important. So having someone that can help you with, whether it's travel arrangements or setting up audio and video, whatever it is that you need, having someone in place, even if it's just for your larger speaking engagements, it's a very good thing to think about. A speaker agent, today we're talking about what it takes to create a winning speaker brand. So you could do it on your own. And I certainly have had clients come to me that had originally had done it on their own. But, the outreach and placement takes a lot of work. It's important if you do have a speaker agent, because I get a lot of people that contact me to PR agencies and other agents to contact me to have a speaker involved with some things that we do. And if it's not authentic, it rubs the wrong way. So again, going back to having written guidelines and SOPs around your speaker brand. So whoever is communicating for you, i.e. an agent, is really communicating in the way that you want, so that you don't have to think about it. You don't have to double check with them. I always say to my speaker clients that it's important for you to really get to know your agents, have role plays with them, because they're going to be your best friend, really, when it comes to landing speaking engagements. Having somebody manage your speaker brand and social media, again, to be authentic, consistent with who you are. Having printed materials, very important. It depends on the industry that you're in, but I can tell you any professional services, audiences, and conference organizers, they're going to look for you to deliver them something, whether it's, on stage signage, obviously, or it could be a book cover, it could be a postcard. Just having speaker branded printed materials always at the ready is so, so important. The majority of speakers that I work with, if not all of them, are authors, whether it's longer books or short books or guidelines or articles. So if you're not the greatest writer, it's not something that you love, a lot of times I suggest to have a ghostwriter for these things. Again, going back to similarly with the speaker agent, somebody that really understands you and your language and how you write. And writing a book, if you haven't done it, is very good for social media, because even starting to write a book or a long article will help you to create bits of content. And those bits of content can help you to get visibility in terms of the ecosystem I was mentioning before. Initially, if you're a newer speaker, having some type of budget for initial meetings, holding lunches. I mean, I've done gazillions of things, but just investing in a lunch and learn, to do something like that, it makes a lot of sense with conference organizers. And then there's gazillions of tools and subscriptions that you need for a speaker brand. So just so you can kind of think through what this looks like. Here's a chart just so you have an idea. But, just thinking through that. And I don't know where you all are on your journeys. Maybe you are investing quite a bit. Maybe you're investing, but you haven't measured the effectiveness. So this might be a reminder to you to measure the effectiveness of your spend, and make sure that you are actually getting an ROI from your speaker brand. So then other things that you want to think about in terms of outreach, right? So I look at speaking opportunities in two significant ways. One is the most obvious, which is speaking opportunities outside the organization. So this is looking at things like speaker bureaus, right? So there are general speaker bureaus. There are what we call tier 1 speaker bureaus. There are women designated speaker bureaus. There are smaller speaker bureaus. So you have your macro speaker bureaus and your micro. So identifying those and looking at what their guidelines are is really, really important to understand. Some of them are looking for people with no less than 100 talks. Some are fine with 10 to 20 talks. So really taking the time to identify and outreach to them. Some smaller speaker bureaus will allow you to create a profile on them, and that's a great way to start. The other thing is obviously taking the time to create a plan for target industry conferences and universities. I haven't really talked about universities yet much, but universities are very, very, very important and can be a really win-win for any speaker here. I've seen a lot of my clients really blow up through just getting them placed at universities across the United States. So don't discount universities. They have very big budgets for lectures. They have very big budgets depending on what you're speaking on in different tracks. Look at universities that have multiple departments like law, business, healthcare, so on and so forth, entrepreneurship. That's a really good place to look. Doing something, again, locally, regionally is the easiest place for conferences and universities. So maybe having a plan there would be really great for you. And then there are also festivals that I've seen speakers don't think of, but then when I open their eyes to it, they're like, oh, that's interesting. So there are actually festivals like community festivals, cultural festivals, where they have business tracks. And so that's something to look at, because I have had personal success speaking internationally and my clients by just looking at some of these. They're basically multi-day cultural events in different countries that they have, where they have a whole business track, maybe on entrepreneurship. So something for you to take a look at. Creating alerts, definitely being aware of what's going on in terms of speaking opportunities based on your strategy and your plan. This is important. Having RSS feeds set up for speaker calls in industry daily. Every day I get an alert for speaking opportunities for women, and I'll take a look every morning. It's part of what I do every single morning for myself and for my clients to see, are these real opportunities? Adding profiles across all relevant speaker directories. There are a ton of them. And the good thing with the speaker directories now, as a podcast host, I know this, a lot of them tie into podcast opportunities. So that's a good thing for you to look at and think about. Now, I want to stay a little bit of time on this one piece, networking in industry. Okay, so most of the speaking engagements, you need to have all the upfront that I just mentioned, of course, but networking in your industry and with your peers and in associations like LeadHERship Global, obviously, like organizations such as LeadHERship Global and Curve Up, which Linda is running, right? Yes, perfect ways to help to get speaking engagements. But thinking beyond that, looking to, if you had your dream, target vertical audience to serve, whether it's as a business or as a speaker business, who would that be? And then looking at the associations, the more qualified associations that are a part of those target verticals, and going to their events. This is what I do. That's why I'm always busy. It's good. Going to these events and getting involved with these associations like LeadHERship Global. These are really the ways where you will find in my experience, the best opportunities to speak, because once you're developing those relationships, you can say, hey, I know I've been coming to your events, for example, and I noticed you don't have anybody speaking about X. Let's say it's operational management. I don't know what you all speak on, right? I would like to do a talk because I understand who your members are. What do you think about that? And then because you're a part of the association and because you've taken the time to attend their event, believe me, they will give you time. So I can say, like, as a short-term action step, this would be a short-term, highly recommended action step. These member organizations, they're fantastic. Qualified nonprofits, very, very important, because with the nonprofits in the audience, like, for example, if it's an industry nonprofit of an industry that you're in, attending their events, suggesting to speak, even if it's a volunteer opportunity, generally the people in that audience will be people that represent companies that could bring you in to speak. So that is another win-win that I've seen quite a bit with my clients. So this is more outside the organization, correct? Now let's talk about inside the organization. So inside the organization, this is interesting. And again, an area of focus that we do at my company where I've seen wins is if you work for a corporation, but you're also a speaker, there are many, many opportunities within corporations and organizations where you can raise your hand to speak. So whether it's diversity inclusion initiative, or maybe it's a human resources initiative, or maybe with many of my clients, it's a community initiative, right? Looking for those internal boards, those internal initiatives to become a speaker and a leader is so important. And it's like for me, it's very much like low hanging fruit for my clients. This is, if you have the opportunity to do this, this will really help to drive up your visibility, because what I've seen is then if you do something like that, then the organization will say, hey, oh, Mary did a great job internally. Why don't we have her know next, go do our next TED Talk or something. I've seen this happen all the time. So if you have the luxury of being within an organization and having, your speaker work as a second job, this is something that really does work.